Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. A couple of areas that I have found in the last few years that have been earth-shatteringly psychedelic are those of Web3, blockchain, and the concept of decentralization as a whole. I feel for many of us who have found our way into psychedelic medicines that the idea of decentralization, in which centralized powers would not have the power and authority they have today, is an idea that we can find a lot of congruence in, considering that all of us who connect with psychedelic medicines are doing so in a decentralized way already, as these medicines are still illegal in most parts of the world, and as such, we have to find them in our own ways. As such, today's guest on the show is a man whose journey began with psychedelics, punk rock music, and learning to question everything around him. That being said, and as you'll hear him speak to in today's episode, he became frustrated at the idea of quote-unquote wanting a different system, yet being surrounded by others who talked a lot, yet did not take action to try to create change. At a certain point, he decided to take his destiny into his own hands, and in this episode, we dive into what this process looked like for him, how psychedelic medicines assisted him in this process, his pathway of discovering Web3 and blockchain, some of the projects that we are both bullish on right now, and much, much more. So please help me in welcoming my man and mentor, Amethyst Flame, onto the show. Amethyst Flame, so excited to have you here, me brother. You know, as I said in the intro to all you listeners, Amethyst is someone who came into my life probably about, 4 to 6 months ago. And what I noticed originally, like I said in the intro, was I noticed that we have this small group we run based on sovereignty stuff, which for anyone who checked out the Brandon and Joe Williams episode or hasn't yet, go check that out. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We'll get into a little bit here, I'm sure. But we have a small sovereignty group we run called the Mighty Morphin Sovereign Rangers. And I let everyone in there when I started. They'd be like, hey, add anyone. I trust everyone in here. Just add whoever you think is a homie. And all of a sudden you showed up in there. And I remember Alex, because he's a little more like active in there than I am mostly. He ended up hitting me up and he's like, dude, this guy Amethyst is a unit. And I'm like, yeah, I saw that name pop. And I'm like, who is that? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know either. I'm like, who added them, right? So then we hop on a call, one of our community calls in there, and you're on there and I get to meet you. And I'm like, this guy is a gangster. First of all, Amethyst is my mom's favorite stone. And so my whole life, my whole family house has been littered with amethysts, so that was a great synchronicity, man. So super excited to have you here. We're going to dive into a lot of stuff, guys. We don't know where this conversation is going to take us, whether it's going to be more into spirituality and subconscious reprogramming. Psychedelics, of course, we'll touch on. Whether or not we're going to get into Web3 and blockchain, we're just going to let it rip, tater chip, as they say. So Amethyst, how you doing, bro? So excited to welcome you on, man.
Yeah, I'm blessed. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for our brotherhood and sharing and expanding and being pillars and community builders and weaving this tapestry together of being our best selves here on earth during this holy shift.
Dude, I like that pun there too. The holy shift, from holy shit to holy shift. That's a good language switch there, dude.
Exactly, bro.
Because again, at the end of the day, we ain't stopping this thing, nor would we want to, right? I think for any of you that listen to this show, you're all surfing the big wave of consciousness evolution. And at the end of the day, looking at things like a holy shit, right, can be exciting, right? Holy shit can be good, but holy shift is more accurate, as I've found. So, dude, I'd love to start out, man. You're such an eclectic individual. You have so many things you're into. You remind me of myself a lot where, you're into a lot of things that some people wouldn't think go together, but when you actually learn about them, they actually go together very well. So how did this all start for you, man? Like, how did you first get interested? Of course, you're a big fan of cannabis like I am. I imagine you've connected with other psychedelics too. I know you were into punk rock when you were younger. I was a metalhead, right? So we have similar upbringings. How did this all start for you, man? And, how and when did you get interested in psychedelics? And then we'll dive into everything else from there.
Well, there's a lot to that, so I'll just give kind of an overview without going too in depth. I will say that from a very young age, I always knew that how we were living on Earth wasn't what I'll say right, is how I looked at it then. Now I know it wasn't aligned with natural law. So I was always searching for something other than what existed. And I spent a lot of time alone in the woods when I was young. And then I found punk rock, and I lived not far from Manhattan, and we would go to the Lower East Side. And in that, I found community that also saw things a way that was different than the mainstream mentality. So that taught me a lot about community and DIY, do it yourself, and just that you could actually do things that you want to do and find people. And this was like really pre-internet. Like there was very basic bulletin boards. So there was like flyers and people you knew and who handed you a punk rock tape. And around that time, also psychedelics were involved in my experience. But early on, basically, almost all psychedelic experiences I had were very traumatic, with a few good ones peppered in here and there. And it wasn't until later on in my journey, like that's kind of what planted the seed of like, hey, life doesn't have to be this way. That being said, that scene I was in, eventually for my path I was on, others I saw led to self-destruction through substance abuse, suicide, just losing the dream, right? It became just about destroying something. And then if you're trying to destroy things, what are you really destroying? Because all is just a reflection of the one. So, yeah, I ended up getting really sick for a while, and I found a man named Carl Jacobs, and he helped me by teaching me about connecting to higher self. And when I went and saw him, he said, you know, doctors work on the body, shrinks work on the mind. And he's like, here we work on the soul level. So he also is the first one to introduce me to frequency medicine. And this is like 20 years ago. And then there was a good chunk of time in between there where I was just oscillating between having awareness that there's more to what I know physically, but also being afraid to step into my purpose. Because what if I failed? What if I wasn't good enough? And I just, over the years, uncovered a lot of limiting belief patterns. And eventually I was aware of them, but I didn't know how to change them. And yeah, I had my first child like 7 years ago. And right before that is the first time I started to actually sit with medicine ceremonially. And then that brought a lot of things together, because then I was like, oh, I wasn't just having a bad trip. I was like doing some deep level healing, and I had no guidance, and I had no idea about protection or clearing. So I was just an open door for things to run in and out of. So that shifted a lot. And really in 2015, I had a big kind of, it wasn't so much an awakening as it was like a commitment. It's like, it's time to stop pretending I'm this version that fits into the matrix, and acknowledge that that's an aspect of me, but that's not the only me. So what happened was I ended up purchasing a home with my then partner. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but it's what I decided to do. What I really wanted to do was get land and build a pyramid on it. That's all. I was like, I'm going to get land and put a pyramid on it. I didn't really have anything beyond that. But then they put up the 5G right behind the house, and we had just had our child. So I went up against the city and Crown and Castle and was like, wow, there's no room to do anything. And that's when I was like, it's time to go get the land. My partner at the time wasn't in the same wavelength as I was. So we consciously split, and, we're in good ways. And I found land that I'm on now. And this was at the same time I was kind of gifted the vision of Rainbow Bridge, which really is just a remembrance of a lot of the ways that most people have been living here on Earth and how that's been coming back around. So I've heard it in some cultures as the prayer of 7 generations. And it's just co-creating sanctuary for beings to become their best selves through education, empowerment, embodiment during this holy shift. So really what it came down to for me, though, was, am I willing to be alone and look at myself? And that's what I did the first year I got out here. I really cut contact with most people and just focused on doing the inner work. And it was a long year with a lot of stuff that happened. And every year progressively since then, what I see is that level never really goes away once you commit to being your best self. It's just you get better at doing it, and you get better at surrendering to the divine plan. Because I thought I had an idea of how the world was supposed to be when I was younger, and I took a lot of massive actions to try and make it my reality. but it didn't line up because that's not how it was supposed to be according to the divine. And what I find now is that power is really an illusion. And what it is that there's a surrender to the divine power. When you surrender to that, then that can flow through you. So, yeah, it's been a journey, and psychedelics have definitely played a big role in it. And what I'll say with that is I support medicine work as long as there's integration and embodiment of the downloads that were received from it. If that's not the case and one is just continuing to go back to the medicine for the answers, then it's just another aspect of externalizing your own inner authority. The medicine is there just to remind us of what we already know as a fractal of the one, which is all. So yeah, and then in that another thread that has weaved through that my whole life is music. So I also am a conscious hip hop artist, and what I see with all that, what I now know is a big part of who I am and how I show up is to be a vessel for receiving and transmitting. And to me, you're talking a little bit about holy shift versus holy shit, and it's like word magic is real. Everything is frequency and vibration. So what we say matters. And I did spend a good amount of time making unconscious music glorifying substance abuse. And thankfully, I never really released it in a big way because I look at it now. At the time, I really wanted to put stuff out. But now it's like looking back, man, if I had put that out, how many people would have listened to that prayer and internalized that prayer? So now the music I make, yeah, there's fun stuff I make. And then there's also stuff that is very much about my experience here on earth right now and like doing the best I can to be the best me. So, and from all that, like it connects a lot of dots, right? It's just about like seeing things differently, but also just seeing things as they are without having an attachment to what I may want it to be. And that's how I found a lot of threads that have woven together between like the inner work, spirit work, subconscious, frequency, scalar, Web3, music, community, and how here on earth, like there's been an intentional program placed on humanity to break us apart on a village and familial family structure. So it's really big and important work to be in community right now. And it's going to bring up whatever isn't aligned. And it's about being able to communicate with each other in good, clear, authentic ways and make agreements. And that's a big part of what I'm doing right now is like with everybody I work with, it's like, how can we, first of all, make agreements with ourselves? And for me, that's really where it all spawns. Because I mean, we make agreements with ourselves and then really we're making agreements with the divine. So yeah, to get to where I am has been a good chunk of time in this lifetime and other lifetimes as well. And it's also for me, the importance of patience. Like I'm here to be patient. I'm here to take action when it's aligned. And I'm also not here to jump at every opportunity.
Yo, what is up, everybody? I hope you are enjoying the show, and I wanted to take a second while I had your ear to tell you about an upcoming event that I am hosting that I am beyond excited about. On August 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern, we are hosting our next Breathe with Cannabis event, and this month's theme is that of ancestral healing. For those that are hearing about these workshops for the first time, they are a 2.5-hour live cannabis and breathwork ceremony hosted online through Zoom that you can attend right from the comfort of your own living room with an amazing community of like-minded individuals from all around the world. These workshops are an absolutely incredible way for any of you who have been looking to open up the psychedelic powers I speak of often with cannabis on the show to be able to do so, and we want you to experience it for yourself. To find out more info on this month's theme, the breakdown of the event, and to register and save your spot, head to the link in the show notes, and I am so looking forward to guiding all of you into ancestral healing through the powers of cannabis and breathwork. Enjoy the rest of the show. Dude, holy shit, bro. I fucking love you, man. You know, I knew the first time I met you, bro, that we were so similar, and, you know, hearing more about your upbringing and everything really allows me to see a lot of similarities. And you know, also, guys, like I said in the intro, and I'll expand upon a little bit more, I'm currently in Amethyst's amazing mentorship to learn more, not just about Web3 and blockchain and cryptocurrency and things like that, but more so to also hold the new frequency in my subconscious of the person who can look at the charts and be calm, can see the charts go down or up and really be neutral to it. That is the most important thing when you're getting into something like crypto. Put it this way, right? We're all very high level people in your mentorship. I won't mention names just in case they don't want to know them, but, some good homies, some that have been on the podcast before, like these are very high level people in there. And we've all experienced like the swing of what an up and down does. And it's been amazing to know ourselves in that degree, right? Like what happens when money goes up? Oh my God, right? And all of a sudden, is life perfect? What happens when it goes down? Oh my God, all of a sudden, is life horrible? Are we still expecting that the external world is going to fit our internal demands? Or are we coming from within and going without from there, And so it's been amazing to, as I typically say, fuck around and find out when it comes to like, what gives me a sensation? What gives me a trigger? Like, what are these things inside of me? How do I bring them to the surface? And how do I ultimately transcend and transform them into light, into something that is positive in nature, something that is in service to the all rather than service to self? Oh my God, who am I without this money? Who am I with this money, etc. And, I think one of the cool things too that you mentioned is, how your not only communities have shifted, but view of community as well. Because I've gone through this exact same thing, bro. When I was a kid, I found metal music and I really enjoyed it. And it wasn't that, I wasn't an atheist or anything like that. I would say I was agnostic. I always believed in God, but I was like too cool to say it, like, oh, I'm agnostic. I don't really know, but what I found in the metal community originally was like, hey, it was great. I'm a guitar player. So, met a lot of good people there. But what started happening was very similar to what you were saying in punk rock. It's like everyone was talking about like, yeah, we got to change the world. But then they were just blaming everything around them for why the world wasn't going the way that they wanted it to go. And so then after a while, I got kind of bored of the seriousness of the metal community. It's always funny when you're at shows and you bump into someone and they're like, I spilled my beer, marching this solo. It's like so ridiculously serious. So I was like, I got to get into something else. And I found electronic music. And that was really fun. Talk about like a 180 shift in terms of, frequency. But at the same time, lots of substance abuse and kind of the same kind of thing, right? Like, yeah, we're all anarchists and whatever. And then when the pandemic happened, like half of my crew that I would go out with fell for the easiest thing to spot in the world if you're on that level of consciousness. Now, again, I'm not dissing anyone who didn't see it right away. Like it took me a little while as well. But I had my suspicions. I was like, wait a minute, the government's saying they're caring about us. They're saying we're all in this together. That's definitely not true, right? But I didn't have the facts along with it. So, again, like these were all amazing opportunities for me to start realizing like, hey, these are also not the droids you're looking for. Not bad droids, just not the droids that I am looking for, right? There's no hate here. There's no frustration. There's none of that. Just an amazing opportunity for me and these people to realize that we had vibrated out of each other's alignment. And when I left and they left, like we both had space in our lives from which to find more people that were good for us, right? So I view it all as I'm very grateful for the experience, but it's funny how our experiences have been similar. Like, hey, community, this isn't it. Hey, community, this isn't it either. And ultimately what I had to do too was create my own community. And in doing that, I found some really amazing communities, man, that are just so much fun like you have, and creating your own and finding other communities that are aligned. And it really feels like, dude, like this is, if we were in a Star Wars movie, we would be in The Force Awakens right now, because we're starting to realize that we have always had all the powers that shouldn't be. They've only been miraging us with power. The analogy I usually say here is it's kind of like when you're watching one of those cartoons and they're walking down a dark alleyway and all of a sudden they see this big, scary shadow happen. And then it's just a house cat. That's kind of like what the powers that shouldn't be of doing, right? They're kind of saying like, oh, we're going to take all these things away. And that was what was really cool. Not to go on a tangent here, but I think you'll like this part because you mentioned also like 5G and things like that. I thought that was really amazing, the opportunity that the powers that shouldn't be gave us during the pandemic, because one of the things they did was they tried taking things away from us. And they would say, hey, if you don't get this thing, you can't go to restaurants. If you don't get this thing, you can't go to movie theaters. You can't go to outside patios. You can't go to these things. And you know what happened? All of us who were like, never in my fucking life am I taking that thing, we found other ways, actually better ways to connect without those things there. When they took restaurants away, we were like, wow, why are we paying to get poisoned anyway? Thank you for that, right? Movie theaters. Well, I can't make a volcano bag in a movie theater, so thank you. I'll just watch movies at home. Oh, you don't want me to go to clubs? Cool. We'll just have house parties instead. Right. So it was an amazing opportunity to actually get a lot of the distractions in my life out of the way. And so I'm very grateful for this experience. And I know you look at it the same way, that the entire scope of life. Very grateful for all the things that have occurred in your life. But, I'm curious for you, man, like, to dive into a little bit of Web3 and blockchain, like when did that come into your reality, bro? Because, again, a lot of us hear about this. There's a lot of like what I would call toxic culture around cryptocurrency. And I was definitely in that in 2021. I remember I randomly downloaded Coinbase, put like $2,000 on Ethereum. It went up to like $4,000. I was like, oh my God, started putting all my money in there, and then it tanked. And I was like, fuck this, and got out. And so obviously I've been a part of that too. But how did all this start for you, man? How did you first get interested? Did you get burned right away? Things like that. I'm curious to hear, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. I want to weave it in, starting with something you said in the beginning. First, I want to say I love you too, man.
Thanks,
like, definitely see a lot of resonance and reflections between us and the way that we move. And it's an honor to work together. Thank you for your trust, and thank you for, sharing what I do as a way shower with the people that trust you. It's potent, and it's amazing when we're able to weave these communities together, because that really is, it's us all holding a shared vision of the optimal timeline. That's it. This whole reality is based on observation. So when we place our attention in the right place, things happen quickly. And that's like the mentorship group with mindset, right? Like, yes, you said it exactly. When we go into it, we don't even start with crypto or trust. We start with mindset for the first month. And like Ryan was saying, there's a lot of high level people in it. And my thing is, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm here to share with you what I found that works for me and was passed down to me. I learned on my own, and I've also shared with others that I've seen work for them. And I encourage everybody to find their own path and to integrate and embody what works for them from all different techniques, because it doesn't matter the technique. The technique is just the ladder to reveal the principle behind the technique. So you can chant mantras, you can do awareness check-ins, you can do cold plunges, you can do physical activity, whatever it is that brings you closer to that space of identifying negative or limiting thought belief patterns, becoming aware of them, and then not resisting or fighting them, accepting them, letting them play through, and then very intentionally crafting the vision that you're holding, and then rewiring your subconscious through things like recording your affirmations and listening to them when you're in alpha brainwave state, learning how to consistently get to alpha brainwave state. So I say all that because what I've come to the awareness of, like, people ask me, like, how do you find that coin? Or how did you find out about this airdrop? And yes, I used to research my ass off, but now I spend more time focusing on my inner work, and things come to me. But they also come to me because I'm holding a vision of what I'm doing. Like, I have a strong why. And that's another thing that we focus on in the mentorship is, what's your why? Do you have a strong why? Do you know why you're doing what you're doing? Once you have your why, then you can get your what. Once you have your why and your what, the how and the when will show up. But most of us are trained to only look at the how and the when. So of course, we don't have a good reason for doing what we're doing. We're just doing it unconsciously. And the key is we want to be conscious. So crypto came into my experience in 2017 through a few groups of people that I had known within the live music circles that I was in. And again, those music circles have a certain character type that's attracted to it, that enjoys late nights and mind-altering substances. So we all thought a little bit differently. And that's where I saw a key with that for myself, was in those groups, most of those people did their own thing, and they lived outside of Babylon for a good part of it. I mean, there was other things that they involved themselves in, but so it was already like, we're living outside the rules of Babylon. So that was like, all right, cool. But then there was also pieces to it I wasn't that into. Anyways, I got introduced to it through those groups, and I didn't know much. I actually got a pretty decent crash course in one of the people that put me on beyond just ETH and Bitcoin and Coinbase. And they showed me how to get sovereign in the space, which is get off the exchanges, have a non-custodial wallet, use a VPN. So I started with that, but I got in at the end of it in 2017. Similar thing. I put money into ETH, it went up, and then it tanked. I put money into a bunch of other like crappy altcoins, because at that time it was only the second bull run cycle. So Then after that, I just kind of let everything go and focused on what I was doing. At the time, I was in the photo video world, co-owned a creative agency and did a lot of like commercial work. And that wasn't feeding my soul. And that was made very apparent to myself by myself through a series of events that culminated in reality manifesting that I didn't even have to stop doing it. It just stopped happening. And that was what happened around COVID, right? Whatever we want to call that thing. But so in that time, I was still paying attention, and I started to pick back up because things started to pick back up. And pretty much what I had left behind had ended up doing well when it moved up. And by that point, I fell into the trap of thinking I was a genius because I was ahead of the curve. And then I proceeded to take everything I earned and make really bad decisions for the most part through that second run. Not all of them, but one of the best decisions I made was finding good mentors. And I joined a number of communities, and I ended up really staying in only one main community. And that's under the teacher, one of the main people I have studied under in the blockchain space, Chicago crypto blockchain bully. Definitely recommend checking out his Instagram. Yeah, I learned a lot from him. And there are other people I learned from as well, like Illuminati Congo, Paige Flowers. And that really opened my eyes to bigger than just, because when I got into it initially, it was like, oh, okay, I get it. It's like another internet, like that you can have custody over your data on and your assets on. But I didn't get how deep that could go. Like I didn't understand that you could become your own bank. I didn't understand that you could operate on different chains and different ecosystems. I didn't know that you could create a trust. I didn't know that basically all financial transactions will be moving to the blockchain. So when I started to become aware of that, I was like, oh, wow. And that was also at the time where I was really like, yo, I'm doing this Rainbow Bridge thing. I don't care what anybody says. I know y'all think I'm crazy. I know that everybody in my family is like, what are you up to now? And, you know, anytime I made a big move like this, I hear a lot of people telling me what I shouldn't be doing. And then on the other side of the big move becoming successful, I hear all those people say, I believed in you the whole time. It's like, you believe in it now that you see it. And I'm glad you see it. So, you know, being able to see that there's all these possibilities for like longevity in this space. Like this is how financial transactions, this is how the internet is going to be used going forward. So that you can set things up now so early on that are for 7 generations or beyond. And as I started to learn more and more about DeFi, it's just incredible that a single person, like anybody listening here, can go and involve themselves in basically becoming their own bank through lending or staking or borrowing against their own assets or offering them to someone else or going in liquidity pools. And you can be doing the same thing that massive corporations or massive hedge funds are doing. And you don't need to go through any middleman. Nobody is aware of who that wallet belongs to if you go about it the right way. And what I loved about it was this is the fucking cancel curse, but I'm so excited to say it. That is the punk rock ethos to me. Do it yourself without centralized oversight, because that centralized oversight is not here to help you. It's going to tell you it's here to help you, and then it's going to pull tricks because now you've given your subconscious, unconscious agreements to it. So what really got me into it was choosing to live the life that I live. And naturally, I find anybody that's doing this kind of living of this life is going to fall strongly into either getting fully off grid, going full permaculture and just being out, or seeing that there is a connection between the internet and being able to link those two together. That's what I see happening a lot now, that there's people I know that are older or have been doing the permaculture off grid for a long time and are now like, all right, now I'm ready to, like, what's up? What's this thing all about? And that to me is a beautiful synthesis, because mind, body, spirit, and digital, it's all here right now: mental, spiritual, physical, and digital. And the digital realm, it's 0 and 1s, right? So it's binary. But still, even if you look at the charts, they show up according to the Fibonacci sequence. Like the charts that are an algorithm of human emotions on Earth are showing up in the digital space according to the Fibonacci sequence. So when I see cues like that, it's less of like, oh, it's technology. I'm like, okay, how can I work with technology to amplify what I'm doing for my soul mission instead of having fear of it? Because it's already out there, and anybody who didn't learn about the internet got left behind and wouldn't be here where we are right now. So the internet is not something to be feared. It's just something to learn about and know how to operate in it for what is your best purpose with it. But if you don't have that why and you get into crypto, don't even do it. Take that money and go hire somebody or whatever you need to do to learn about mindset first and foremost. Start there. When you learn about mindset, it doesn't matter if it's crypto, because a lot of people get into crypto because they might not have a lot of money, but they heard people get rich quick. And it's like, you're better off investing in yourself. I've invested a lot in the crypto space through losses and gains and mentors. And where I've learned the most is from other people who've done it before me. And then also from going and trying it out for myself and seeing what works or doesn't work. So really, man, what it's all about, I feel, is just like that journey to be a sovereign being in service to the divine. And that is going to bring up these spaces that are evolving and early and give you the ability to reach beyond centralized structures.
Dude, perfectly stated, man. And I wholeheartedly agree because, for me, I felt the exact same way, meeting you and meeting people like Aaron and Chris and Alex Zek and Alex, of course, and everyone I've connected with over the last 4 years, because I always loved the ethos of metal and even EDM and stuff, where it's kind of like, hey, like we can live a different reality, right? There's a different reality we can tap into. Yet at the same time, right, when I was there, I knew that I was one of these people as well that had big goals and had a big vision, but did not know how to enact it, didn't believe I could, right? So of course I was vibrating at that level because that's where I was at that time. And then through the series of very fortunate events, right, the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, a lot of those distractions, like I mentioned, went away, and my entire friend group changed up. And, when my entire friend group changed up, very similar to you, what happened, I've told the story a million times, so I'll just breeze over it. But I had a big awakening in 2019, right in like December of 2019. And obviously 2020 is when the weirdness happened. So during that time, right before the weirdness started, I started the Highly Optimized podcast, and I started wanting to get into coaching and things like that. And it was funny because a lot of people I knew, again, I don't think they had any malintent or anything, but they were just like, oh, dude, like really? People are going to pay you to talk to you? Like, what are you doing? They didn't get it, right? And that's okay. It's not their mission in life, right? Like, I don't expect everyone to get it. But it is funny, a lot of those people will hit me up and be like, hey, man, I kind of need your services now, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm always down to help friends out. And that's my goal. I realize that it's been in my own life too. Like even when, crypto came out, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And now I'm into it, right? So I know those things just happen. I don't take them personally, whatever. But it is interesting to notice that, right? How like when you are on the cutting edge of anything, whether it's a business, mindset shift, crypto, whatever it is, there will undoubtedly be people around you that will try to bring you back down to a past level, right? And I don't think they're doing it consciously in most cases. I know I wasn't when I was in that seat, but it's just that newness is scary, especially if you don't know what the newness is for, right? The why that you were talking about. And so for me, when I got into podcasting and coaching, of course, I had a deep why for it, but I couldn't expect anyone else around me to have the same why, right? So of course they wouldn't understand it the same way. But it's amazing how when I shifted my why, my entire life changed. And the whole group of people I hang out with now is totally different. What I do now is totally different. I mean, it could not be farther from what it was 4 years ago. And I'm very grateful for that. And the cool thing too is, like you were talking about, why I personally got into Web3, blockchain, et cetera. Of course, yeah, the idea of getting rich and things like that is great. But at the same time, I also know money doesn't make you happy. So when I really started to get interested in this, I had to really ask myself, why am I getting into this? Is it just to get rich? Is it just to have money? Is it just to have financial security? Those things are not bad, but is that a deep enough why for the insane uncomfortability I'm going to go through in this space? And what I realized was no, right? Like the money was a vehicle, but the destination rather, is where I wanted to talk about. Like, where's that vehicle taking me? And I remember that was one of the first questions you asked us, right? Is like, why are you asking for this type of abundance in your life? And I thought it was an amazing question, man, because it allowed me to re-tap into the fact that What my vision is for this whole space is that, we all know the issues around censorship on social media, for instance, right? You post something like me, right? I post something about cannabis, a natural plant, but because of the intense programming around our entire collective, and also because of the laws that have been created as part of the In God We Trust, at least here in America, these centralized social media companies, obviously they don't want to get in trouble, so they just ban it, right? Instead of speaking up and saying, no, we're just going to allow it, right? Like they should, but I can't expect them to do things that I think they should, right? They're their own company. So when I started to understand what decentralization really meant, I had been looking at it just in the financial sector, which again is amazing. DeFi is incredible. But what I started realizing was decentralization fixes almost every issue I can think of off the top of my head that I run into. So what happens when there's 1,000 Instagrams and the one that you're on says, no, you can't talk about natural plants, but the next one says, hey, we'll take you over here. Well, what's going to happen is now the only platforms that are going to continue to exist are the ones that allow the most freedom. The financial institutions that exist are going to be the ones that are the most honest, the most integrity, et cetera. And when you look into almost every aspect of centralization, it's fucked, right? Like that's why the world is so backwards, because everything is centralized through a couple different things that the same people own, right? When you look at politics, right? How many people get into the thirst trap of it's Biden, it's Trump, right? It's like, dude, the guy above that pulling the strings, or the woman above that pulling the strings, just wants you to think you have a choice, right? And your real choice is to just go, no, thank you. I'm not going to play into your game anymore. I'm going to start learning about what the 1% do know about trust law, getting myself out of the jurisdiction of the United States, being able to not pay taxes lawfully and legally, being able to protect my interests, being able to start talking to my neighbors again and say, hey, what are you growing? I'll grow this year. You want to grow tomatoes? I'll grow peppers. Cool. Let's get back to that, because at the end of the day, these centralized companies, whether it be in food, medicine, et cetera, they don't care about us. They care about running a business. And I'm not saying that's inherently bad, right? Like they're not inherently bad for having that objective. But at the same time, we as the consumers of those goods must understand that our health is not their priority. So again, is it bad? I don't choose to view them as enemies. I just choose to use discernment to make wiser choices for my health and well-being and my friends and family's health and well-being. So I'm spot on with this, dude. It's like I'm so in alignment with everything you're doing. And I'm really excited we get to talk about this today, because I imagine a lot of people are like me, even a year ago, where I'm like, I don't know what this Web3 and blockchain thing is, but I know it's getting bigger every 4 years, and it really is going to be the future. It already is in a lot of ways. And just the technology I've seen come out since I've been training with you a couple of months has been wild, with all the mining things that you got me into and everything like that. So it's just been really cool, man. And I'm so grateful to be able to have this conversation today.
Yeah, me too, man. Without a doubt. It's just amazing to be able to come together and share in this way. And it increases the vibration, right? The frequencies that we're emitting here, we're transmitting, we're receiving from each other, and then sharing with others. And there's a common stream that runs through all of this for me and how I approach everything, right? It's currency. And the Web3 space is a optimal place for one to see one's relation to currency and one's perception of currency, because all of these centralized systems are built around us giving our attention and allowing the currency of the divine to flow through us and paying attention to that version of reality. So when we start to become aware of currency and that it's actually doesn't belong to anybody, it's always except for creator, and you can be a conduit for it and you can receive it, but holding it creates blockages. And that's one of the reasons why I think that you see on the centralized side, they're well aware of how all this reality works, that they'll have trusts and companies doing business with companies and trusts, and the currency is consistently moving. It's very rarely held. Like countries don't even really, some do, but they don't hold gold anymore. It's all this currency that's flowing. It's like, so you got to allow the currency to flow. And a lot of the programs that have people on earth stuck in centralized systems is based around scarcity and lack and not trusting that they can be stewards of currency. And I feel that's one of the things about community in general, whether just Web3 or not, in general, it's like, what are you bringing to the table? And I don't mean that like Genghis Khan bring tribute. I mean like, hey, it took effort to build this fire. Do you want to come sit here? Great. Do you have some firewood? Can you chop wood? Are you bringing food? Or are you just sitting here expecting to use the fire and not contribute in any way? And when that happens, it becomes like the currency is no longer flowing. So within community, it's got to be, all right, we're going to agree that the currency is going to flow this way. We'll all contribute this way. And then that's how the current gets bigger and the momentum grows. And the things that we're doing here, I'm not going to see what I do like in this lifetime. There's going to be ripples beyond, none of us will. There's always going to be ripples beyond what we do. But when we become conscious and aware of directing the currency with others doing the same thing, the momentum can grow very quickly. And that's where I really feel that we see tidal waves of changes and shifts in consciousness. And that's what's happening right now. And I don't hate anybody. I have strong feelings towards people that are indoctrinated in centralized systems. I'm not in opposition to those centralized systems. For the most part, I choose to not pay attention to them and place my attention and my intention in the spaces where I actually see what could be for the most optimal. I don't claim to know the most optimal. I'm just doing my best to align to it and hold a vision of what I perceive it as being. So within this space of decentralization, what you said is absolutely accurate. The currency of the people will decide where they want to be free. Now it's up to the people to decide that they want to be free. And I won't lie, groupthink is incredibly comfortable and intoxicating. It's an echo chamber of validation without actually having to provide any sort of truth to it. And that's falsehood. That's false prophecy. That's being inauthentic with your relationship to each other and to creator. It's an ego drip. It's not even an ego trip. It's like a drip because you got to keep coming back for a hit. And then when you stop coming back for the hit, the dealer wants to come get you. It's the same thing. It's just an addiction to being disempowered. And when you get into the decentralized space, it can be very overwhelming. And this is why I say it's important to do the inner work and have toolkits to handle it. Because first of all, you're going to be flooded with information. Then secondly, you're going to have to discern if that information is good or not. And if the people behind that information are good or not, or what their motives are. Then once you do that, then it's actually breaking lots of contracts and restructuring how you think and view things. And then that also requires action in the physical. So anybody who's ready to step through this door, resilience is an important attribute to develop.
Yeah.
Looking for the right word there. Yeah. And, as we know in this mentorship group we've been in the containers I see my brother hold, it's like, there has to be a level of resiliency, compassion, and also just firmness. Like true love on earth right now is unconditional love. And also unconditional love is tough love when things aren't serving unconditional love. So in order to really be truly like stewards of community and currency, we have to know what we're willing to say no to, and also what we're saying yes to, and not leaving that decision up to somebody else saying, oh, they have our best interest in mind, when historically it's proven that they do not have our best interest in mind.
Yeah, dude, 100%. One of my favorite quotes is, your yes has no power until you learn to say no. And I'll be completely honest, like that, I felt so attacked when I first heard that, because I have a big pattern that I've overcome and continue to see pop its head up every once in a while of people pleasing. And, what I now refer to as emotional slavery. Believing that other people's emotions are my responsibility. So if someone around me, if, I want to do something and that upsets someone else, oh my goodness, I got to make them feel better, right? When in reality, like the law of correspondence says, it's as within, so without, not as without, so within, right? And Rachel and I were talking the other night, and we were saying that if the whole world woke up with the embodied understanding of that one hermetic principle, it would change everything. Because when I look at the world right now, I look at a lot of projection, so much projection, right? It's the president's fault. It's my mom or dad's fault. It's the economy's fault. It's, they make me so mad. If only they would stop doing that, then I could do this, right? All of these things that are giving people's power away. And I think part of the reason that it frustrates me so much is because I also had that for a long time. And I just know what a fucking thirst trap it is, because it's very similar to an addiction, right? You do a drug and in the moment it feels great, but what goes up must come down. And when you finally have to come down from that and you're not going to take any more, it's a very hard truth to recognize, right? It's a very painful lesson to be able to embody. But at the same time, on the other side of that, just like with addiction, there is a world of freedom. There's a world of freedom when you start asking yourself why you are the way you are. And one of my other favorite quotes that my buddy Mark says a lot, who taught me all about word magic, is when you learn to think about your thinking, you come alive in a new way. I think it was Mark Twain actually that said that. And it's just an amazing quote because, one of the reasons I loved cannabis my whole life, since I was 16 is because it does that. That is exactly what it does. It allows me to think about my thinking. The challenge was for many years that I had no idea how to utilize it, right? Because we never got a user manual for it, which is why I do what I do now. Because I know the power of it, but I also know, how silly we as human beings can be when we're immature and we don't know what we're fucking with, But at the end of the day, the more of us that can start showing, not through teaching necessarily, but through embodiment of when they say, oh, doesn't that make you so mad? And you go, no, nothing makes me mad except me. And, again, maybe they just overgloss it, right? Maybe they don't even notice it. Maybe they disagree. But every once in a while, you get someone who goes, what do you mean by that? And that to me is their soul saying, hey, I'm ready. I'm ready to wake up a little bit. Right? And, again, when you get into the DeFi space or any of this decentralization space, like you were saying, there's no one to protect you. You send money to a wallet, you got to make sure it's accurate or it's gone, right? So there's a lot of responsibility, but why I like it is it's an exact mirror of how life truly is, right? Like in life, no one is going to come save the day for you, no matter how many people try to tell you they will, right? Oh, we have the perfect pharmaceutical for you. Oh, we have the perfect care center for you, right? For anyone who's gone through the medical system before or had family members, the challenge within that, right? And so, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Nothing is all bad or all good. But at the same time, right, discernment is the ultimate muscle we need to wield here in this lifetime. So it's just amazing to be able to go back and forth in this because, like you, I've experienced all these things. I've experienced victim mentality. I've experienced projecting. I've experienced disempowering myself. I've experienced, taking risks with psychedelics that I look back on and I'm grateful for, but I'm like, holy shit, that was a big wave to surf, and that's why I love speaking to these things. I know that not everyone that listens to the show will get it right away. A lot of people intellectually understand it like I did for years and thirst trap themselves into thinking that because they can explain it or reinstate it to someone that they now get it, they've integrated it. And those are just things that everyone's going to have to go through in their own time, right? It's all divine in the eyes of Creator and the eyes of God, as I see it. But I think the more we can have these kind of conversations, the more that even one person goes, hey, I think I just got something, right? What if I just chose to put all the focus back on me? What if I chose to start asking myself when I get triggered why I got triggered, not why that person triggered me? Because that person did not trigger you. Something inside of you got triggered based on your beliefs, stories, expectations of that individual, etc. And the more that you can do that, the more ownership you own in your life. And the more ownership you take in your life, the more that life can become whatever you want it to become, because you know that you are solely responsible for it. And again, with great power, right, to create your own reality comes great responsibility. You can't be the architect of your reality. You can't be the creator of a new world if you're still falling into these victim mentality thirst traps. It's just, they're antitheses of each other. You can't have one. You can't have both at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. It's so spot on. And, this is the current program that is one of the current programs running on Earth is a program of narcissism. And the narcissistic program is, look at me, give all your attention to me, and I'm going to dismiss anything that comes up for you. And that creates a victim mentality, right? The narcissist is in a victim mentality, and it's creating victims. And, I've heard the term wetiko. I was kind of gently reminded by someone I love and trust who walks the red road that you want to search where these words come from. I don't know. It wasn't linked to a tribe or anything, but there's a word he taught me in Lakota. It's called washishu. I think that's how you say it. And it means taker. And that to me is in resonance with that, because the victim is always taking. It's always saying, I didn't get enough. Did you see what happened to me? I'm blaming this person because my life's not right. We don't have any control over anything except our mind. And everything else, you could look at it, it's God's plan, or if you're not in the persuasion of God, and you can look at it as it's just random coincidence. It's something is going to happen at some point in time. So there's absolutely requirement to, I believe, be your best self in community with one another, to embody an aspect of self-reliance. Now, we as humans, it's very difficult to be 100% self-reliant. We're community-based beings. So it's important to acknowledge that self-reliance to me means more that I can pull my own, and I'm not codependent on someone else to show up. That if they don't show up, I can keep doing whatever I need to do to keep going. And that is a cornerstone of good community in my experience. And that's why, there's something I'm excited about. I'm on the team working with, and that's Dr. Kim Chi.
Yes.
And this, to me, weaves together all the threads, because Dr. Kim Chi is a meme token made by a dear brother of mine who I've been working with him and the other founder for about a year, one in relation to Rainbow Bridge and the other in relation to just being new Earth people. We've done a show together in Chicago, and I know how they roll and what they're up to, and how they move and the level of inner work. And the whole coin came about because Sasha, the founder, was trolling big pharma and doing freedom stuff during the pandemic. And the doctor who's the head of cancer at Vancouver ended up assaulting his vehicle that he was in and breaking his window. So they made a meme coin based around Dr. Kim Chi as his highest self, here to expose pharma and bring the truth to what cancer is and how you can treat it without going to pharma or chemo. And what I love about this project is, firstly, it's real people I know involved in it. So that's amazing. Secondly, the intention is to expose lies and help people remember the truth. And in doing so, help us remember our right relations to Mother Earth. We don't need to go to a pharmaceutical company that slapped a patent on something they synthesized that came from a plant. We can go directly to the plant. And then there's no middleman. We're putting their weird ass prayers in the medicine that you're taking. If you want to learn more about health, read The 100-Year Lie. That's a very good book, and how that system actually operates. But so Dr. Kim Chi is exciting me because here it is at Web3. The founders we're never selling. The charity wallet has 21% of the tokens and is going to get unlocked, I think, every quarter to be put towards some type of awareness or funding of alternative cancer treatments. I'm not going to say cures, whatever. I'm not trying to run up against anybody, but I'm just going to say there's a lot of information and experience out there of different people that have used things like RSO or used things like frequency or studied Dr. Royal Rife. I myself beat Lyme disease by cleaning up how I ate, doing my inner work, and working with frequencies intensively for a month. And I'm over 2 years, never had any symptoms come back, and even got tested. So that to me is where the alignment is between all these spaces. I could be where I am, you could be where you are, this other team person could be across the globe, and we're communicating and making things and sharing them that's helping people people are choosing to place their attention where truth is and not where lies are. And that to me is the biggest difference between operating in a victim mentality in a centralized space than operating in an empowered mentality in a decentralized space. You get to choose where you place your attention, and you can place your attention with others who share similar intention. And, that to me, it's I wouldn't be here doing this, talking with you or talking about Kim Chi if I hadn't followed the cues in front of me through my intuition and discernment. This started because a brother of mine who worked with us in Rainbow Bridge, shout out Luke Mungo, he was insistent on getting us on this podcast and about the frequency and scalar devices we have in relation to how I beat Lyme and, just how I work with them. And I was resistant because I had gotten a concussion skateboarding. Oh, no, I wasn't skateboarding. I got a concussion, got kicked in the head with a soccer ball. And I was trying not to look at screens because I would get headaches. But finally, I agreed to it. And I'm so grateful I did, because that's where I met both of these brothers that went on to found the coin and have worked with one of the brothers and another part of the team, a different team, but they're still connected. just, through community, to help us with Rainbow Bridge and getting into partnership with the landowner and building intentional net positive community. So it's just like when you are ready to open the door and see the truth, be ready for it to hurt, and also be ready to live a more amazing and magical life than you could ever imagine. Just knowing that you're not actually in charge of it. You can just be in charge of how you react or respond to it.
Yeah, dude, 100%, bro. That is true empowerment right there. And that's why when you told me about kimchi, I was like, I'm all in. Like, I don't care if I even see money back from it. I just want to support that cause. And that was something that was really powerful for me too, because, like any human, we must have our own suspicions around our own actions, right? So when I got into crypto, I knew that I said what my why was, but that was a time where I proved to myself, like I knew with my authority inside of me, I was like, okay, cool. And, when Kimchi went for a fucking run, because it did, I mean, like, I made some crazy money, money that was, life-changing money to a certain degree. I remember that, all of us were talking about it and we were just like, we're going to fucking hold diamond hands, and it's been so fun to be a part of that project because as someone who has seen with my own two eyes cannabis cure cancer and many other things as well. It's not just cannabis. I mean, you think about it this way, and again, this will land well in this podcast, but for anyone listening, have you ever thought about the idea that when you were born, right, or when you were growing in your mom's belly, your DNA, your body, etc., knew how to grow a kidney, a liver, knew how to grow a brain, all of this stuff. And then the system has tricked you into thinking that the only way to heal yourself is to radiate and chemo yourself, right? Like, it's pretty ridiculous, dude, if you really think about it. And I don't blame anyone. I was indoctrinated in that same fucking system. I figured it out by accident. I started going to a school in 2011 for cannabis education. Thought I was going to go there to learn how to grow and open my own dispensary, very left brain type things, which again, no big deal, no bad there. But, when I went there, I found that the owners, they were deadheads. They had followed the dead around for years and they had bought land in Maine back in the 80s. And they were the real deal. There was a lot of people. This is 2011, so very different world than we live in today, even though it was very recent in terms of, history. But, there was no medical here yet. There was no recreational like there is now here in Massachusetts. And so a lot of people that wanted alternative care ended up coming to the school to learn because they also had a holistic health advocate on hand that would teach about, eating sprouts, doing apple cider vinegar, alkalizing the body, all of these things alongside all the cannabis education. And so I walked into this just thinking like, cool, I'm going to go learn about cannabis and, create a dream of working in the industry. And, that did happen, like I learned a shit ton about cannabis. I ended up getting into the industry. But what I really learned there was just how much I had still been living in the matrix, because all of a sudden I'm seeing these people come in because I was an intern at this point. I would sit with the founders at these different meetings where these people would be showing them their scans and things like that. And the owners would say, listen, we can't guarantee anything. Like this isn't a guarantee, but we can support you with what we know. And they would say, okay, cool. And so what I really want to articulate here, and I think I say this every time I talk about it, but I feel like it's very responsible of me to do this. What I am not saying, first of all, none of this is health advice. I'm not telling anyone who has cancer right now not to go do what you feel is right for you. Everyone's got to make their own decision. But at the same time, what I am saying is that I saw these things happen. I saw people come in with a myriad of different, not just cancer, but other illnesses as well. And it wasn't just, hey, start smoking weed and your whole life's going to get better. It wasn't that, right? It was, hey, we need to start evaluating what is going on in your soul and spirit, right? Just like shamanistic cultures talk about, whatever it is, whether it's a broken arm, whether it's cancer, whether it's glaucoma, whether it's IBS, whatever it is, in shamanistic culture starts as a spirit challenge before it goes into the mental plane, then the emotional plane, and then finally manifests in the physical plane as an illness or disease that you can actually measure and see with your eyes. And so they would start talking to them about certain patterns they had in their life, stress, things like that. They would start shifting their diet away from any processed foods, things like that. They would start having them rest a lot. One of the best things about RSO, Rick Simpson oil, for anyone who hasn't heard that before, is that it is fucking mega strong. Like no matter how much of a tolerance you think you have for cannabis, that shit's going to sit you down. And when you're going through cancer or something like that that's very severe, your body needs a lot of rest. And so it's not uncommon for someone that's on this treatment to sleep 12 to 18 hours a day. especially when they first get onto it. And, I know this because I went through it with my own father. My father succumbed to brain cancer because he didn't want to stop doing the things that gave him cancer, but it did support him so much in his final days. I got an extra year with my father because of RSO, is how I look at it. And during that time, I got to create the closure. I got to really do a lot of things that allowed me to now look at my father's passing as one of the best opportunities in my lifetime, because now I get to speak about him. He lives on in the stories I tell. And, again, I wouldn't be talking about this stuff if I didn't see it happen with my own two eyes. And for a lot of people, they'll say, well, where's the science? And I go, well, okay, let's talk about the science, right? Let's talk about the fact that every cannabis study that's ever been done has only been able to be done if they're looking to find a detriment on cannabis. That's the only way you'll get federal funding. Then if you do get the funding to find a detriment, they send you cannabis from NIDA in Mississippi that's about 5 years old and freeze-dried and full of mold and sticks and stems and seeds, right? So, if people can't see the fact that that would skew the results quite a bit, then I don't know what would allow them to wake up to that. But at the end of the day, right, when we start going into these other realms, it can be scary, just like you were saying. I mean, this stuff was very scary to me, getting into all this, seeing with my own two eyes. But at the end of the day, the people that say, hey, show me the science, the question I ask them is, hey, if you're asking for the science and the science isn't showing that, but I am showing you that I've seen this with my own two eyes, why isn't the first question, what do I not know? Because if it's happened even one time, that shows a inconsistency in the quote unquote science, right? So for me, is cannabis a cure-all? No. Is scalar frequency a cure-all? No, right? But if these things are supporting people in these things, I think the better frame is, hey, what do I not know that some people know? Because at the end of the day, a real scientist would never tell you to trust science. Science is not made to be trustworthy. It's meant as an ever-going experiment, right? Something that they're only doing to continue to break it down and find new discoveries, right? There's never a point where they're like, all right, we're done with that. That's just the science now, right? But that is the world we live in, where science has become that, right? It's very similar to the clout that Instagram influencers and everyone else have, right? It's not, these days, it's not about how good your podcast is. It's just about how much money do you have. You can get it to number one on the charts if you got enough money. Hey, if you're a musician, yeah, if you got enough money, we can put you number one on Beatport, right? And it's very similar. Science is very similar. Hey, you stroke my back, I'll stroke yours and give you test results that say whatever you want, right? So you have to really dive in to figure out where the real science is happening and what's going on. But, I digress on that. The whole idea of, being able to really be your own sovereign individual is for me the only path, because it's the only one that's continued to give me positive reinforcement the more I go down it. And once again, having these conversations, hopefully at least one person listening walks away from this episode and looks at their life a little bit differently. And I think if, all of us can start going to whatever it is, whether it's cannabis, whether it's God, whether it's the flying fucking spaghetti monster, whatever it is that makes us feel alive, go more towards that. I say all the time, you follow the fun, you will end up exactly where you're meant to end up, in the exact places with the right people around you doing the right things. You won't understand it. Your left brain will be constantly confused on what you're doing, if it makes sense, whatever. But if you can just stick with it, start and keep going, right? The two most important steps in life. If you can do that, you'll end up anywhere you want to be, doing anything you want to do around whatever people you want to be around. It's just really cool, man.
Yeah, all that right there. And I want to talk in response to a number of things you said. First, acknowledge you on your journey and your path and the way that you found here where you are now, what you went through, what you let go of, and how you showed up when your father passed. That is a beautiful, beautiful way. And, you're a younger man, so it's a blessing that was able to have closure around and move forward. And, I'm hearing you say about how he lives on in your stories and he lives on in you. So that's a beautiful thing. So just acknowledging you for what you've moved through to get to where you are. And that with that, the awareness around what it is, how we approach things, how we look at things. Are we looking at them from a space of questioning or indoctrination? And I want to talk in response to what you're sharing. You mentioned DNA and the placebo effect is real. So whatever you tell the human mind is going to work, the human mind is going to convince itself it's working. So if we know that the placebo effect is real, which technically has been proven by pharmaceutical studies, because they have to do a control group, and just like any low-handed black magic. They got to tell you what they're doing, and you have to agree to it to do it. So they're showing it there. Look, placebo effect. Look, we get it from this plant, but you can only get it from us. This is the only way it's going to help you. Oh, okay, sure. That's what some people would say. I say, where's the plant? Who's part of the lineage of the master lineage that's worked with that plant? So then I want to bring that to the DNA, like my brother Ryan was saying. And it's like, what is the DNA? The DNA, very simply, in my experience and what I've learned, is it's essentially a quantum biologic supercomputer that contains all the codes. And like Ryan was saying, when you're born, you grow all these new things in the womb. There's just a certain point where that turns off, right? But it was on. And the DNA lives in the cell, in the cytoplasm, which is 80% water. So the DNA is essentially water. And we know that water structures according to light and sound. If water is stagnant in a pond with sun on it, it's going to break down a different way. It's going to become less structured than if it's flowing quickly out of a spring. And if you play specific frequencies, it's going to make shapes. Cymatics, Dr. Masaru Emoto. What does that tell us when we're thinking about the DNA? Well, the DNA can be programmed into specific frequencies, by specific frequencies. And when we get to that, let's just think about your thought patterns are literally brainwave frequencies. If you're an alpha, it's in 7 to 9 hertz, right? That's like Schumann resonance. So we start to become aware that everything is frequency and vibration, including the codes that are inside the DNA. We can become aware of that. Actually, it's a bigger thing to, like, the mindset shift isn't just the mindset. Like, it starts at the mindset, but it goes down into the DNA. I feel the subconscious is the connector to the DNA, and the DNA is the connector to the superconscious. And there's a study that they did at Emory University where they traumatized these mice, these poor mice, by shocking them every time they gave them black cherries. Generations later, they would just introduce the smell of black cherries in the cage, and these future generations of mice would go in a full-on trauma response. So they were like, look, that experience got encoded in the DNA. So when we talk about ancestral curses or generational trauma, it's real. And when you start to do this inner work around psychedelics or therapy like EMDR, you might become aware of stories that have been running that weren't even based on your experience, but have been in the DNA and passed down. So when I talk about stewardship, really, like, I'm here to be a good steward of my genetics and what I can do in that way, not of who am I breeding, who am I mating with? Like, none of that. Like, what am I choosing to end that wasn't positive for me growing up or my other ancestors? And what am I choosing to carry forward? And I mentioned earlier about the Lyme. It's like, yeah, the day before I got the 104 fever, facial paralysis, cramps, and felt them crawling all over me, I was like, I'm free of parasites on all level of my mind, body, and spirit. And I essentially went through like a 6 to 8 month parasite cleanse from that point forward. So I didn't know what I was calling in, but I called it in. And what that showed me, because I was about to give up at a certain point, just accept I was going to have Lyme the rest of my life. Like people I know, like my aunt or other people who've gotten it. And I ended up talking with Devon, the Black Airbender. I went down to Miami, and he introduced me to the tech he was working with and his teacher that put him onto it. When I saw it, I was like, oh, this is what I've been envisioning, like some type of plate to put intentions on. And this is how it works through frequency. So that's when I brought it back. And I mean, I slept in it for a month straight, and it was very uncomfortable at times, like extremely uncomfortable, especially in the dream space. But on the other side of that month, I became aware of so many limiting beliefs that had been running in my bloodline for generations, and ones that weren't even mine. And that was really like the catalyst for what I could step into to move into who I am right now and who I'm being, and also who I'm becoming, because it's a constant state. It's like the law of variation, right? Like it's the constant is the impermanent. The only permanent is that there's impermanence to it all. So again, it's not about like a final destination. It's about that this is a if you think about it, we're a fractal of creator, and creator is infinite. There's no beginning or no end. So it's about being able to hold more bandwidth as you come into that space of everything is infinite. There's not just me and you having this conversation now. There's multiple realities of it. And to simplify all that really is like, just focus. What I found, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but what I found is if something in your life is hard and causing problems, go inward. And seeking external advice can be helpful, but not when it's like desperately reaching for it. If there's an intuitive cue or somebody you love and trust comes and says something to you, those are often the breadcrumbs that lead you to the deeper truth. I feel that's very important, because when we start becoming aware that we're stewards of our DNA, literally everything that we do is getting recorded in one way or another. So those times that I don't show up the best, yeah, that's in there. So without being hard on oneself, but also being aware, like Ryan said, with great power comes great responsibility. And if we do not have control over our mind, and this is nothing new, this has been shared in yogic texts, in Tibetan texts, this goes back. And it's, if we're not in control of our mind and we get to these higher levels of awareness, our thoughts and the visions we hold with ourselves and others can quickly come into reality. And I'll just use a real life example right now that's affected a lot of people around the States and the world, and it's drill music. I mean, they're making that music to the tones of the deeper tones of the 808. It's maybe the 808, but it's like rooted in the Muladhara and the root. And these are songs with messages about murder and violence and disrespect and not honoring anything. And to see how that's impacted communities of young men in urban environments around the world. And it's not just drill music, it's part of a larger program. But these prayers have now been encoded in that root chakra. So it's just like, wow, when you start to see where collectively we put our attention and how quickly the reality can shift. And that there's so much attention on this form of music. And yes, music is art. There's art behind it. And there's really a lot of trauma behind it. And that's the thing. It's not about trying to get rid of the drugs or get rid of the guns, but let's acknowledge the trauma and create space for people. And this is beyond just the drill at this point. It's any community anywhere on earth where there's been trauma on many generations. It takes people with an ability to be resilient and to think differently to actually be able to shift that program, because it runs so deep. So when we start to get into the inner work, like for me, there's an acknowledgement of the DNA, and that this is a water-based vehicle that responds to light and sound. So I'm going to be mindful of what I consume with food, water, what I see, and what I hear. And I used to be a real stickler for word magic. I'm very aware and conscious of it. And there's also times where, we're humans on earth and we're here to have fun. So what's your vibe behind that word magic? If it's saying negative things about oneself in a negative way, then I'm not really with that. But if it's, cracking a joke here or there and it's humorous, for sure. Let's honor that.
Dude, it reminds me of another favorite quote. Life is far too serious to ever be taken seriously, right? And the paradox of that, right? Like the idea that, yes, right, when we learn about trauma, we want to be aware of it. But do we want to let that refrain us from going out with our friends or seeing an old friend at a restaurant or something like that? The 80-20 rule is totally a thing. And, I say this because I imagine that many listeners are probably like me and Amethyst, where you get into something and for all the right reasons. And then actually what starts happening is you start getting a little fearful of oh my God, I said the wrong word, right? When in reality, you are creating a reality, right? So a lot of people will say oh, curse words and things like that. And I'm like, those are only a curse word if I choose for them to be a curse, right? If I say, oh, I feel fucking terrible, right? Yeah, it multiplies that feeling of terribleness. But at the same time, if I choose to say, I feel fucking joyful today, well, now it's an amplifier to that, And so, again, at the end of the day, I really feel like there's a perfect balance, like everything, where and I think this is what comedy is always meant to do, right? Like, people can do, let's say, very challenging jokes or things that make fun of certain people. But as long as they're not singling one person out and making them the butt of the joke every time, everyone laughs at it. And that's been the role of the jester in the kingdom for a long time, right? Like, I'm going to make fun of everyone so that we all get humbled and realize that, hey, no matter what color skin we are, no matter what age, no matter what religion, we're all just human beings, right? Fractals of the source energy expressing as individuals in this illusion of separation. And so I think it's super important what you just said there too, of like, yes, do all the things, right? But also remember to go have fun. Because that's like, what, in my opinion, the reason you do the inner work, the reason you do all the learning around DNA and all of that stuff that we've talked about is not so that you become more serious. It's actually so you become more childlike again, right? Again, not having boundaries, not discerning, right? Not to use double negatives, but I just did, but in order to really reach your full potential, you have to be able to find the fun and the silliness of all of it, right? Like, again, if you look back, I won't mention it again after this, but if you look back at the last 4 years, right? Like, there were people that really believed it was the worst thing ever. And there were people that were like, well, this is happening. I can't change it. I got to find something I can enjoy in it, And that's the power we all have, right? If you're having a bad day right now, ask yourself why. Is it the events objectively that occurred that led to you having a bad day? Or is it your belief system, your stories you're telling yourself, et cetera, around a neutral event? You got let go from your job, right? Something like that. Is it good or bad? I don't know. It's how you choose to view it, right? Yeah, you could view it as, oh my God, how am I going to make money? Oh my God, my family's going to starve. Yeah, it's going to be bad. Or you can say, okay, it happened. I can't go back and change that. What am I going to find evidence for in terms of me being able to move forward and get something even better? That's the only power we really have in life, So, dude, this has been absolutely amazing, Amethyst. I want to make sure I give you time, bro, to pitch where people can find you, any upcoming rounds you have of the mentorship, where they can find out more about potentially quantum abundance and where you host some other classes in, where they can find out more about Rainbow Bridge DAO and everything you got going on, man. Tell the people where they can find you and connect with you.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate that. Yeah, so rainbowbridgeacademy.com is our educational hub. You can go there and see the offerings I have in regards to frequency, scalar, and also Web3. RainbowBridgeSanctuary.world is the website for our intentional net positive community. On Telegram, there's a quantum abundance kind of subscription chat around crypto. And we also have a Rainbow Bridge Telegram group. That's a great place to start for anybody who wants to learn more about anything I shared here. And drkimchi.xyz is where you can find kimchi and learn more about it. I recommend joining their Telegram. It's a strong community. And like, well, most crypto communities are like, when Lambo, Moon, they're like, yo, RSO, like, this is what I went through, or we're, and there's people are sharing about their experiences living in a way that is decentralized. And it's really amazing to see. And as far as music, I've got an Audius page. I don't know the link like that, but I can share it with my brother. You can put it in the bio, or you can just tap in with the Rainbow Bridge Telegram community. Oh, and yeah, so there's the mentorship too. We have 2 weeks left in this one. It's a 3-month container. We're launching the next one in the fall, and that'll be the last one of the year. And yeah, it's a tight container with guest teachers. So Illuminati Congo will be one, Unity Code, Soul, my partner Mara. And really the main thing in it is to get in a space of why are you doing what you're doing in regards to currency and crypto, and then building out from there. And basically, even though it's a group container, I work with everybody individually to get them like, what are their intentions and where do they want to go? Because the space is vast and it's fractal, and you can choose to focus on airdrops or meme coins or liquidity pools or becoming your own bank or trading or all of them or just pieces of them. And what I really want to do is provide keys and tools for people to kind of be their own way shower for themselves and others, because I really feel that's the most important thing right now. Is it's a transmission of wisdom and experience between generations.
Dude, fucking awesome, bro. Like, guys, I cannot recommend the mentorship enough. I've worked with a lot of different mentors in my day, and I've been absolutely blown away at just how amazing Amethyst has led this container, the incredible brothers I've got to meet through there, and sisters as well. You know, Illuminati Congo, Soul, who we had a call with last night, who was fucking awesome, by the way. I love that guy. All the people you've had in there are just been so amazing. Unity Code's another one. I've learned so much through there, and much more than just the learning. I really feel like I'm on a really fun trajectory, right? Because for everyone listening, you'll get this too. And I remember Jay Griff talking about this, who was my first mentor in the kind of sovereignty and crypto space. He was like, you know, getting money is fun, right? Like getting into crypto, learning stuff, making returns is fun. He's like, but you know what's not that fun? When, you know, maybe you hit your first big bag, you're now a millionaire, and you go to call all your friends and like, hey, let's go do something. They're all like, oh, sorry, dude, I got work, right? So, you know, we were joking when we first started it, like, dude, look around the room, right? This is who we're going to hit up when we do hit it. And we're going to say, hey, how do we put these resources together? Where do we want to put it? I mean, dude, like just hearing the things in there that people have wanted to do, you know, in my case, like one of the main things I want to do and why I'm calling in this much abundance is I want to be one of the ones funding these cannabis researchers without having to have them find a detriment, right, to it. I want to give them $1 billion and say, hey, you don't need federal funding anymore. I'll foot the entire bill. Please put the accurate truth out there. Don't try to find positives either. Put the accurate truth out there. The same with cancer research. The same with all of these things. Let's give people the real whole picture of this field so that people can make informed choices, whether it's Western med, Eastern med, anything in the middle, doesn't matter to me, but let's at least allow people to have a really neutral stance around things, just like I do on this podcast, right? I personally, in my life, am a proponent of psychedelic medicines, but also I didn't want to come on here and make a podcast about why psychedelics are the best thing everyone should do them, because that's not accurate, right? They're not for everyone. And until we start having people that even have a certain view in their life, like I'm a proponent of psychedelics, but I'm not naive enough to think that I don't have a position of influence. And so in that way, I'm not going to tell everyone to go do what's worked for me because I don't know if it's going to work for them. But I can give them a buffet of different individuals like yourself and different choices, and then they can use their discernment to make the ones that feel in most alignment with themselves. And that's exactly what you're doing in the mentorship, man. And it's just been so amazing to get to know you, brother, and be able to have you on the show. And this is just the beginning of all the magic we get to co-create. And I have one last question, man, that I ask everyone that comes on the show. And that question is this. Let's say someone listens to this episode and they're really excited hearing us talking about psychedelics to look into psychedelics in their own life. What is the one piece of advice you would offer them to allow them to use the proper discernment in choosing whether or not these medicines are right for them at this particular time in their lives?
Wow, that's a really good question. Yeah, be patient and trust that you'll know in your heart when it's time. That the seeking outwardsly can be a sign of what isn't there inner. And when you're ready, the right teacher and the right medicine will show up. And if there is something that's been calling you to just intentionally visualize and set some prayers around what you're calling in through that medicine. Because this world that we're in is a tricky place. And not everybody is in their highest alignment, even if they may look like it. So it's very important when you're trusting your life with your mind, body, and spirit and soul, that the container that you're entering is a strong container. And that it's not just going to stop at the end of the ceremony, but that there are people within the community that you can keep in touch with to integrate. And if that is not there, don't do it. Or do whatever you feel called to, but I will say that that's a rougher ride.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be figuring it out on your own as you go along. And the internet is great, but it's not a substitute for real teachers.
Yeah, dude, very, very good words and very wise, man, because, you know, I'll say, I mean, I fucked around and found out, you know, it was the way for me and maybe the way for other people, but at the same time, the way that I utilize them now, I know I get so much more out of. And like we've said the whole conversation, I'm not going to say that's everyone's way, but I know what I choose in this moment. And, you know, I really enjoy the fact that, you know, we all get to make our own choices, you know, even if someone, you know, shares a certain way to do things in a safer way, someone may be like a me or you when we were younger and just have to see how hot that stove is for themselves. You say it's hot, but I'm going to see how hot it is, right? And who knows, maybe that's part of their lineage or their whole entire purpose on this planet as well. So super exciting, man. I'm super pumped to dive more into the mystery with you, have you back on, do all the amazing things. And guys, I know you loved this episode. Amethyst is such an amazing brother of mine in my life, and he's doing such incredible things like you heard today. Definitely tap in, give him a follow, join Quantum Abundance. And if you're ready for the next level up, hop into that mentorship and do not sleep on this. He doesn't take on a lot of clients. And I promise you when I say, like I said before, that there are some high level individuals in our mastermind and our group. And we've gotten amazing results through Amethyst teachings, and not only his teachings, but how he really builds community. It's very unique and it's very awesome. So make sure to give him a follow. If you loved the show, give us a 5-star review. We always love that shit. It gives me so much fuel for my fire. And until next time, everybody, I hope you're having the best day ever, wherever you're at in the world. And until next time, may the source be with you. Peace.